Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Field. I'm a Greens member of the New South Wales Legislative Council. I'm pleased to be able to welcome you all here today to the New South Wales Parliament. I acknowledge that we are meeting today on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and recognise their elders, past, present and future, and the ongoing custodianship of Aboriginal people. I acknowledge the presence here today of John Hu, representing the Australian Values Alliance, of Dr. Feng Chongyi, Associate Professor in China Studies at the University of Technology, Alec Josky, researcher and co-author on the book, and of course, Professor Clive Hamilton. We are here today to launch Professor Hamilton's new book about the influence of the Chinese state in Australia. This is a book about power and influence and describes a deliberate and well-resourced effort by the Chinese Communist Party to influence Australia's democratic and civil institutions. If after reading the book you agree with Professor Hamilton or not, and I note that there are different views within the Australian community, I think this is an important discussion to have as a community and an important conversation to have in our parliaments. I have worked within the community and in this parliament challenging the undue influence of business vested interests, particularly large multinational mining companies and the gambling and alcohol industry here in Australia. They wield massive influence over the Australian political system, the major political parties in this country and on public policy. Their influence is built around their relationships, the movement of MPs, political staff and senior bureaucrats between the political parties, government departments and private organisations. The revolving door that we all hear about so commonly and have come to expect. And of course their influence is greased by hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars, in political donations to the major political parties in Australia. It is clear that our systems and structures are already ripe for exerting influence, and I have seen rent-seeking business interests use them to great effect. When you overlay that vulnerability with the content of Professor Hamilton's book and how Beijing is seeking influence in this country, I think we are right to be concerned. We are right to engage in an open public discussion and to seek to put in place laws to protect our democracy in the Australian public interest. We should never be afraid to have tough conversations that challenge power and soft influence. The Greens have a long and proud history of supporting free speech within our society. Grassroots democracy, peace and non-violence, and social justice are critical principles that underpin the work we do. We call out and reject racism within our society and human rights abuses both in Australia and around the world. We have had ongoing strong federal leadership on these issues. Christine Milne, former leader of the Australian Greens, sends her apologies today. She asked me to read a statement to you all. Christine writes, "I am sorry I cannot be with you all today at the Sydney launch of Clive Hamilton's incredibly important book, Silent Invasion, China's Influence in Australia. The global Greens and the Australian Greens work in parliaments around the world to enhance democracy and to try to strengthen the transparency that should underpin and strengthen it. That is why we have so strongly campaigned for reform of political donations legislation so that the community knows who is supporting political parties in election campaigns and can make a judgment about whether elections have been bought and what was secured with those donations. But political influence goes a lot deeper than only political donations, as Clive Hamilton's book exposes." Christine continues, "Beijing, or the Chinese Communist Party influence in Australia reaches not only into politics, but also into universities, business, real estate, journalism, agribusiness, energy, and more, with the intent, and I quote, to undermine any and all opposition to it at home and abroad." End quote. This is a major concern to those, including many Chinese Australians, who uphold genuine participatory democracy, freedom, human rights and justice. Christine says, ask yourself when was the last time you read anything critical of China's human rights record in mainstream Australian media? In the lead up to ASEAN, can we expect an expose on China's influence in Cambodia? Then ask yourself why. Christine concludes, I congratulate Clive on the book and look forward to the critical debate on the influence of the Chinese Communist Party in Australia that it engenders. And she ends. So the issues raised in Professor Hamilton's book should concern all of us who want a free, open and democratic society where our governments serve the interests of all people in Australia, free from undue influence. I am pleased to welcome you and to make this space within our Parliament available for this important discussion. I apologise that I won't be able to be here for much of the event, but there is some significant legislation before the House today, which I am responsible as a Greens member for. Today I am challenging the undue political influence of the gambling lobby in this state, in the upper house. I recognise that the conversation that is happening today doesn't stop here, so I look forward to continuing this important discussion into the future, inclusive of all voices. I'll hand you over now to John Hugh and the other speakers today and wish you the best for the event. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you for your help. Thank you. Thanks, Justin. We are really grateful.